Hey everyone, this is Gordon, aka F-Spot, and I'm sure by now a few of you have read Alejandro's 21-page PowerPoint presentation he's posted on his website. So let's go for a little ride. I'm going to dive into some of the details of the court case and the eventual dismissal of the court case. Now, for those who are unaware, Alejandro attempted to silence 4 individuals and I from speaking out against him on social media. Alejandro also attempted to seek a wholly unfounded and frivolous civil harassment restraining order. So essentially, he took us to court over Instagram posts. Now, in the end, the court denied the restraining order request in the name of justice. In Alejandro's 21-page statement, let me highlight the fact that he does not cite a single court document. All we saw were a series of Instagram screenshots that ultimately failed to hold up in the court of law. Alejandro also shared a limited selection of information with the public solely from a one-sided perspective, and unfortunately, a lot of people have acted on that and took it as the truth. Everything mentioned in this video is backed up by actual court documents, emails, partial transcripts, which ultimately led to the judge's dismissal of Alejandro's unfounded case. Now, Alejandro falsely claims I have posted his private information on social media outlets, and this could not be further from the truth. He also claims I was a former business associate of his, and I conspired with other individuals in Cup Gang to defame him. Alejandro stated in his temporary restraining order request that he is a well-known public figure, and on his own accord, he posts daily videos or video vlogs that freely account his personal activities. In fact, he actually posted a video where he openly flaunts his new home rental and provides his audience with a visual display of the exterior and interior of the house. Alejandro claims he's worried about attention from strangers, but he voluntarily exhibits himself in public by driving expensive cars in densely populated areas and boldly broadcasts his home rental. As a voluntary public figure, he claims that I have defamed him. However, any information I have posted related to Alejandro has been done with the understanding that the statements were true when I made them. Now, Alejandro has no basis for a defamation case or claim, as he has failed to prove that actual malice was intended by me. Now, in the end, the judge ruled against him, citing lack of evidence, saw no immediate threat to his well-being and health, and ultimately all 4 of our cases were summarily dismissed. So I'll be dividing the rest of this video into 2 sections. First, I'll discuss the background information that led up to the court case, the cease and desist letter, and the issuance of a temporary restraining order and additional events that transpired prior to the first court date. Secondly, I'll be walking you step by step as to what happened during the second hearing on March 12th. And I'll be discussing the arguments presented by both sides, the outcome, and ultimately the consequences of Alejandro having his case dismissed. So we're going to jump right into the background information. We're going to start off with the live stream incident. So in January, Alejandro posted a 25-minute video tour showing his new house. Now, several people alerted me that his house was a rental and linked me a URL to the real estate listing. I subsequently went on livestream and did a visual comparison between screenshots of the 25-minute house tour and the photos that were on this real estate listing. So nowhere did I ever show his actual physical address or maliciously post it anywhere on the internet. Now we're going to jump into the cease and desist email. On January 24th, 5 people and I were sent a cease and desist email by Alejandro's lawyer and paralegal. In the attached document, they claim we had continually harassed and defamed Alejandro. They asked us to refrain from harassing him by ceasing such activities, including but not limited to 1. Disturbing or threatening him. 2. Communication of false information, his business activities, and coworkers that are damaging his reputation. 3. Publication of false information on social media outlets. 4. Posting his address on social media outlets. The TRO. On February 2nd, we were served a temporary restraining order, or TRO. Alejandro's lawyer claimed the following reasons why his client is seeking quote-unquote protection. Quote, former business associates of Mr. Salomon has invaded his privacy and posted his private information, such as his address, on social media outlets such as Instagram and Facebook, endangering his safety as Mr. Salomon is a, quote, well-known public figure. Mr. Salomon has had strangers come to his house, stalk him, and threaten the safety of him and his family. Additionally, Mr. Salomon is being harassed and defamed through publication of false statements, unquote. Now, Alejandro's lawyer also added a rather odd stipulation that stated we were to, quote, refrain from posting defamatory false statements on social media outlets such as Instagram, and refrain from posting his address and sending strangers to trespass on his property. Now, lastly, his lawyer also wanted us to pay for his attorney fees and costs that amounted to around $3,600. He claimed that there shouldn't be a filing fee because we used, quote, violence, stalked his client, used intimidation, or spoken in a way that made his client reasonably fear violence. Now, I'll be discussing the lack of evidence to these false claims in a bit. The TRO stated that our first court date will be in 3 weeks. So we're going to fast forward to February 24th. That was when our first court date was set. And a day prior to our court appearance, I received a call from Alejandro's paralegal. She left a voicemail at 11:55 a.m. stating the court hearing tomorrow will be, quote, postponed to March 10th, and that additional information will be sent to me via regular mail, unquote. Now, when I heard this, red flags went off in my head, and I contacted a friend of mine who was a lawyer and asked for some advice. After I confirmed to him that I had not received anything in the mail via registered mail, he contacted the courthouse and spoke with the clerk, who confirmed that the court date was still on for the 24th. Now, at this point, the only conclusion that I could reasonably draw was that Alejandro's paralegal was deliberately trying to make us miss our court hearing, because not showing up would mean that Alejandro would win by default, and a judge could therefore place a restraining order on us. This was a sign of things to come in how Alejandro and his legal team would approach the case. On February 24th, we all went to the first court hearing, and needless to say, it was a complete disaster and circus. Everyone was trying to talk at once. Both attorneys on each side were arguing back and forth. But what confused everyone was seemingly how unprepared Alejandro's legal team were. Alejandro's lawyer had no evidence on hand and seemed to confuse the charges, the respondent's name, so on and so forth. And then he made a really odd request to postpone the case by a few weeks so they could gather, quote, more evidence. Now, Junior's attorney stated that Alejandro has several weeks to file for discovery, but didn't. Or most likely, couldn't find any evidence at all and were stalling for time to dig up some sort of evidence. Now, for those who aren't familiar with civil court procedures, filing for discovery allows a party to obtain evidence from the other party or parties by request for documents, admissions, depositions, subpoenas to non-party, etc. So long story short, the judge was unable to come to a decision and set a second court date on March 13th. This gave Alejandro's legal team 2 additional weeks to gather further evidence. Now, we're going to go straight into the second court appearance. Now, on March 13th at 9:30 a.m., we were ready for round 2. For the record, I did not have an attorney present for the first half of the hearing. However, I was generously offered an attorney by a friend of mine during our lunch break and was subsequently represented by this attorney for the remainder of the hearing. When we first entered the courtroom, the judge made it clear that to expedite the matter, we will be combining all 3 cases into one large case. All the witnesses that Alejandro's lawyer wanted to call forth and presented will be used for all the respondents. Now, what that means is all witness testimonies will be applied to everyone as one large case. According to Alejandro's lawyer's own pleading and paperwork, he claimed that this was a conspiracy against Alejandro to bring him down, meaning all respondents were acting in concert. Alejandro's lawyer decided to try my case first, most likely because he saw I had no attorney present at the time. So I was put on the witness stand for the next 2.5 hours. And in the paperwork here, you can see what Alejandro was claiming against me. He says, quote, Gordon Chen has conspired with XYZ to damage my reputation and therefore my business by posting false statements about me to millions of people on social media. He is stalking me online. He's invading my privacy by posting my address for millions of people online. And several people have trespassed onto my property due to his posts. I've asked him to stop harassing me and stalking me, but he refuses and continues to solicit more co-conspirators to help him harass me and invade my privacy, end quote. Throughout the next 2 hours, I answered questions that range from how I knew Alejandro, our previous relationship, if I have ever leaked his physical address. They even asked me if I was obsessed with him and stalking him in real life, so on and so forth. I was quickly able to explain to the judge that I had no affiliation with the other respondents or Cup Gang, and that I had never had a business relationship with Alejandro. It seemed that Alejandro had a bone to pick with me in regards to, quote, leaking his address for millions of people online, end quote. First and foremost, I've never posted his address online. Numerous people have found his real estate listing on the internet with little effort and then sent the URL to me. And I told the judge that I was on an Instagram live stream comparing screenshots of the real estate listing with Alejandro's 25-minute, quote, house tour video. Now, the judge looked at all of us and was extremely confused as to why we were even in court. He said that everyone's address is easily accessible within a 30-second Google search. I then explained to the judge that Alejandro is a self-proclaimed public figure and that if he didn't want the attention, he wouldn't have done a 25-minute tour of his house or publicized his newly rented home. Alejandro and his lawyer both tried to deny that he was some sort of self-proclaimed public figure. But take a look here at the paperwork that was filed for the initial TRO, and it says that Alejandro is a well-known public figure, and this was filled out by Alejandro's lawyer himself. Now, throughout the questioning, Alejandro's lawyer kept confusing certain terms, facts, statements, etc. And this seemed to upset Alejandro, and he was visibly annoyed and upset that his own lawyer was so unprepared for the case. There were times where Alejandro tried to speak over his own lawyer, but was shut down by the judge. Now, after I got off the witness stand, the court adjourned for lunch. And this was when I was offered an attorney for the rest of the day. After lunch, it was Buddy's turn to go up on the witness stand. While on the witness stand, Buddy admitted that nobody had actually attempted to visit Alejandro's new house, let alone harass or threaten him. He also verified that all the security threats and alleged incidences where strangers came up to Alejandro's house occurred at his old address. There were no reports of any suspicious activity at his new address. Now, when Farshad got on the witness stand, he also revealed that Alejandro lives in a gated community with security guards that required authorization from the homeowner before getting past the front gates. Farshad then tried to make the argument that no matter how secure a gated community was, someone was crazy enough will be able to make it through. And then he gave the judge the following analogy. He said, now imagine you're in the White House. It's heavily guarded and fortified. But if someone wanted to get through the security and all the fencing, they will find a way. The judge looked around, shook his head, and strongly disagreed with Farshad and dismissed his analogy and reasoning. Lastly, it was Alejandro's turn to go on the witness stand. Now, he presented a very teary-eyed statement claiming he and his wife feared for their lives, and they had both suffered from anxiety and physical discomfort from the entire ordeal. By now, the judge basically reached to the conclusion that Alejandro received no threats, no trespassers have come to the security gate within his gated community, let alone the house, and reiterated the fact that anyone's address can be found in a heartbeat. He also said addresses are not private information and are readily available on the internet, phone books, and so on and so forth, and that nobody should have any expectation of privacy with an address. After Alejandro finished his testimony on the stand, his attorney indicated that he had concluded all witness testimonies for my case. The judge looked over the paperwork and immediately dismissed all the charges brought forth against me. Alejandro's lawyer was completely stunned and shouted that they were going to take it to the appellate courts or the appeals courts. Then Junior's lawyer stepped in and said if they conducted their appellate procedures as they conducted this trial procedure, they completely welcome it. I was subsequently informed by my attorney that they had zero chance of winning in the appellate court and they'll be wasting tens of thousands of dollars. Now, let's just rewind just a little bit. Remember in the beginning of the video, I mentioned that the judge wanted to roll all three cases into one to save time? Well, unfortunately, Alejandro's lawyer did not get the memo, and he was under the impression that there'd be three separate cases. So my attorney piped in and said that having one trial would certainly be the most efficient manner to hold this hearing. This is what the judge agreed to earlier as well. Now, Alejandro's lawyer interjects and claims that he would like to separate the cases and was ready for the next case. And this obviously annoyed and shocked the judge, who said, well, we don't need to hear the same thing twice. And Alejandro starts shouting back saying, well, we need to hear the other evidence. And the judge retorted, why aren't we doing all the cases as one like we agreed to earlier? And by now, things are getting a little bit more heated, and Alejandro's paralegal started to talk over everyone. And this upset the stenographer. It's the person who documents and writes every word that's being said in the hearing. And she was forced to tell everyone to stop talking at once. What really puzzled me was the paralegal's presence at the court, since nobody ever brings a paralegal to a court hearing since they are not a licensed attorney and cannot give out any legal advice. Alejandro and the lawyer continued to argue back and forth, and the judge asked why weren't the other two respondents called up to the stand. And he then asked why would we have to sit through 3 separate trials to listen to the same facts. And Alejandro's lawyer claimed he wanted 3 separate cases and have paid for these 3 separate cases. Now, in the middle of all of this, Alejandro's paralegal starts arguing with everyone a second time. And once again, the stenographer interjects and says, "Your Honor, can we please have the paralegal stop talking? I can't focus. I just can't type when there's more than one person talking." So the judge tells everyone to stop talking, and he's obviously really annoyed with Alejandro's legal team. So he looks at Alejandro's lawyer and says, quote, "You know what? Spit out that gum out of your mouth. Bailiff, get the trash can." So the bailiff looked confused and picks up the trash can, puts it in front of Alejandro's lawyer, and makes him spit out his gum in front of everyone. Now at this stage, Alejandro's lawyer and paralegal starts talking over everyone for a third time, and the stenographer is forced to tell everyone to shut up again. So it was painfully obvious that the stenographer was fed up with the entire situation. Ultimately, the judge tossed out the entire case and basically called it a day. The other 2 cases with Junior and Mikey were subsequently tossed out with prejudice a few weeks later. This was due to Alejandro and his lawyer not showing up to their own court date and filing their paperwork improperly. So let's backtrack to the first court appearance in February. While we were waiting for our case to be called, I was listening to some of the other cases that were presented to the judge. There was an old grandma who was seeking a temporary restraining order against her own grandson because he has repeatedly stole her car, refused to move out, and was basically a drug addict. And another case involved a marital dispute where the woman was claiming the man was physically stalking her. And to me, these were real cases that required real restraining orders. And I knew how absurd our cases were, but listening to these other cases really hit it home for me. And this whole case brought forward by Alejandro was without merit, lacked any credible evidence, and basically wasted everyone's personal time, the court's time, and a lot of money. The court threw all of our cases out the window. If Alejandro didn't want any attention, he shouldn't be calling himself some sort of self-proclaimed highly vocal public figure in the first place. Now granted, nobody wants any negative attention, but clearly, all of Alejandro's allegations were unfounded and dismissed by the judge. And as for Mikey and Junior's court cases that were postponed, Alejandro and his lawyer didn't show up to the 3rd court date set up 2 weeks after my dismissal. The judge was so upset that he basically dismissed Junior's and Mikey's cases with prejudice. Basically, that means Alejandro can never file the same charges against them in the future. And on top of that, Alejandro is going to pay for all of our attorney fees. So I hope this sets the record straight. You don't want anyone or someone giving you one-sided information without the full picture. Now, if you guys made it to the end of this video, congratulations. I know this whole drama fiasco has been going on for way too long, and this will be the last time I publicly speak about this particular case. I will not be answering any additional questions since I feel like this video has covered every imaginable aspect of the case, the lead up to the case, the results, and consequences. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope this was somewhat informative and filled in the gaps of my side of the story.